day 2 of the Money Show in Toronto, and we're live on location with Jay Rosenthal, the president and co-founder of the business of Cannabis. Jay, welcome to SmallCapPower.
Thank you very much.
So at Business of Cannabis, you're playing this very important role in terms of being a knowledge player as we go through this historic period towards the legalization of recreational cannabis. Talk to us about Business of Cannabis.
Yeah, so we started, thank you very much, that's very kind. So we started about a year ago because we saw a need to really focus on the business components of the industry that was developing. People, of course, know the product, right? They know it from history, but they weren't clear on what the industry was developing like in Canada. And we saw technology people and marketing people and certainly licensed producers and all the ancillary businesses that were developing Canada in this uniquely Canadian environment that we really wanted to highlight. It was everybody was a risk taker, which we really liked. It was sort of our own Silicon Valley happening here, but in a brand new industry where for the first time in a really long time that Canada could actually lead the world.
There were some players here today, companies saying that it's not the Money Show, it's the marijuana show. So much excitement around this sector. You're going to be talking about what it means for investors as we move towards legalization. Could you share some highlights of that talk?
Sure, so it's going to be a ride. I think anybody who's been following it over the past year, even since January, know that this is a ride. And it's because there are lots of players in the industry. Certainly there's lots of licensed producers here in Canada, many of them publicly traded, which is unique to Canada, unlike in the States. There's even some Canadian companies listed in the States, right? So there's a lot of that. But also it's a really uncertain environment, right? The regulatory environment is changing not by the day, but pretty substantially over time up to now, and will change again October 17th, and maybe change again beyond that.
How does the Canadian cannabis market compare to other geographies? Companies say that US is a bigger, more mature market, but all the money is here in downtown Toronto.
Yeah, I think the world capital of Canadian cannabis money is certainly here, and the world cannabis money is here. And that's because we're going about this federally, right? We've come up with a really robust federal regulatory framework in Canada that the US just doesn't have. Now, when you say more robust, in California, so they have a massive recreational market, much smaller sort of medical market, but also the regulatory environment still trying to catch up with what voters approved years ago. Where in Canada, the regulatory environment is super structured, and we're going to create a market to deal with that. And so it's really a different way to approach. Our regulatory environment's far ahead, their consumer market is far ahead. I think at some point the Canadian and consumer markets will actually converge, and we'll be in a great place in Canada to actually make that happen. And by the time that happens, many more states in the US have come along. But the way the US operates, the banking is still the real problem. Yes, there are Canadian companies listed on American stock exchanges, but they're few in number. But how you actually deal with American companies operating in California, but actually can't move product from California to Colorado, and can't really use the banking system to do that, you're super hamstrung in the States, even though they have fairly robust markets. So my view is the Canadian market is much more robust in the regulatory environment, and that foundation is actually going to allow these companies to succeed a lot better in the near and long term.
I heard one estimate that there are perhaps 100 plus cannabis companies in Canada today. For some of them, valuations are through the roof. Is this sector too speculative for investors?
It depends what kind of investor you are. I think it depends sort of, if you're in it for the long term, I don't think there's anything speculative about it. This is going to be a big market, these are going to be leading companies, and that is a compelling investment for anybody. If you're in and out on a daily basis, that's speculation whether you're talking about high tech or cannabis. So it depends on your level of risk. As October 17th hits and these companies settle into a marketplace that is much more predictable, there will be an upswing of people buying cannabis, especially on the recreational side, but there is, for most of these companies, still a really strong medical base that they want to keep holding because they're selling direct to that consumers. The cost is it's a good markup for them, it's a good business for them, and I think they'll try to hold on to that for as long as possible. And people are really finding really unique therapies for themselves in the medical environment here, and it's really a one-for-one, the same companies. And so speculative, I think all stocks are speculative, right? And the cannabis is maybe more than others, but I think this is a real business. These companies are developing into real companies, and they're looking for real opportunities now and in the future. And so the ones that have a long-term view, the ones here today, and the ones talking to investors on a regular basis, that have product, that have real estate, that are investing in innovation, that are looking at markets outside of Canada, those are the ones that I think are really well poised to actually do this, as well as the folks that have supply deals with one or more provinces now. At least in the near term, they know they're going to be able to sell the product they're producing out of their facilities, which is what they really wanted, right?
Jay, excellent talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.